Welcome back, night travelers, to Nakora Nights. You think road trips are safe? Long stretches of highway, empty rest stops, the open road, but sometimes the road isn't empty, and sometimes it doesn't want you to leave. Tonight, we're diving into 10 true road trip horror stories. Encounters that make drivers wish they'd never turned the key, hitchhikers who vanish before you reach them, strange notes left under your windshield wipers, figures appearing in mirrors even when you're alone. These aren't urban legends. They're real stories from the people who live them, and some of them barely did. Before we hit the road, tell me, where are you watching from right now, and what time is it where you are? Because if it's after midnight, the road looks very different. If you dare to ride with us, smash that like, subscribe, and comment below. I survived the road. Now, buckle up, keep your headlights on, and don't answer anyone who waves at you from the roadside. This is 10 Untold Most Disturbing True Road Trip Horror Stories. Let's begin. I did not think fear could follow me across a highway, but it did. I was 19 when everything happened, just old enough to think I understood the world and still young enough to be very wrong. My name is Jonah, a kid from a fishing town on the coast who had always wanted to study sound engineering. After years of saving, I finally got accepted into a program in a city far across the country. Money was tight at home. My mom cleaned motel rooms and my stepdad hauled nets on a crabbing boat. I knew better than to ask them for help, so I packed my small car, a silver sedan older than me, with clothes, a few books, some snacks, and my beat-up guitar that had been with me since I was 10. It was supposed to be a simple road trip, 3 long days, cheap food, and sleeping in the back seat whenever I could. But by the end of the first day, I already felt the weight of the road settling on me like a cold hand. I had been driving since sunrise, and the highway seemed to stretch forever. Endless fields, lonely gas stations, old barns leaning in the wind. The kind of places where silence felt louder than traffic. I tried keeping myself awake by chewing ice from my cooler and singing along to songs. But the hours wore me down, and with no money for a motel, stopping wasn't an option. By the second night, I reached a flat stretch of desert road I had never planned to see. My eyes kept drifting, my hands trembling from too much caffeine. I knew I needed to find a place to rest before I drifted into oncoming cars. My fuel gauge was low too, a soft warning glowing orange. The next exit sign said Red Hollow 3 miles. I had never heard of Red Hollow, but the desert was dark and empty, and the thought of gas or food felt like safety. So I took the exit. Red Hollow turned out to be one of those towns that looked like it had been forgotten by time. A single road lined with a dusty diner, a boarded-up motel, an old feed shop, and a church with peeling white paint. The place looked hollow, like the desert had eaten all the people who used to live there. The diner had a flickering red sign that said open, but the windows were black. A gas pump stood in front of a cramped station, but a chain locked the doors. The church had a small board outside its yard that said, "Community meal tonight, 7 p.m., all welcome." It was well past midnight, but the sign felt like proof that real people still existed here. I parked near the diner at first, but something about the dark windows made me uneasy. Eventually, I moved my car near the church, figuring it felt safer than anything else in town. I leaned my seat back and tried to sleep. The air was warm and smelled like dust. The street lamp above me buzzed weakly, throwing a pale cone of light over the gravel. I was seconds from drifting off when I heard footsteps outside my car. Slow, steady, crunching the dirt. My heart jumped so hard it hurt. I held my breath and peeked over the steering wheel. A tall figure moved along the church steps. The dim light made him look stretched, like his shadow clung to him. He stopped near the door, looked toward my car slowly, then disappeared inside. Every hair on my arms lifted. I tried to convince myself he was just a pastor or janitor closing up after the meal, but the stillness of the town made everything feel wrong. I locked the doors, pulled my blanket over myself, and closed my eyes. I must have drifted off because the next thing I heard was tap, tap, tap on the window. My whole body jolted. A woman stood outside my car holding a flashlight. Her sweater hung loose around her shoulders and lines carved deep around her eyes. "You all right in there, child?" she asked softly. Her voice sounded calm but tired, like she had been awake too long. She told me her name was Mrs. Wade and said coyotes wandered down from the dunes at night, sometimes scaring travelers. "You don't want to sleep out here," she said. "We still have some cots in the church basement after the meal. You can rest there." Her kindness felt real, and I was so exhausted I barely hesitated. I followed her up the church steps and into the building. Inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. A light glowed from the basement, painting long shadows across the hall. She led me down chipped stairs decorated with faded paintings of animals and clouds, saying the kids made them every year. It felt strange, but warm. The basement looked like a classroom with tiny chairs and paper crafts taped to the wall. Several cots stood lined near the far wall. "You can take that one," she said. "Blankets are clean." She offered me leftover spaghetti, but I declined, too tired to eat. She handed me a small flashlight in case the power flickered. Then she left, her steps soft as she climbed back upstairs. I lay on the cot staring at the ceiling. The silence of the basement felt thick. Eventually I drifted off, but not for long. Footsteps upstairs woke me, slow and heavy. A man's voice murmured something, then another voice replied. I froze when I heard, "Did you lock the side door?" and a low answer, "Not yet." My stomach tightened. I slid off the cot and gripped the flashlight. I walked toward the stairwell, every muscle tense. The voices quieted, then a door squealed upstairs. A latch clicked. Another door shut, then silence again. I moved toward the back hallway, hoping there was another exit near the boiler room. The hallway smelled damp and cold. My feet brushed against something soft, and I almost screamed when I saw it was just a fallen coat. I stepped past rows of tiny cubbies when I saw someone standing at the bottom of the stairs. A man, tall, shoulders stiff, head tilted slightly like he had been listening. My flashlight shook in my hand as I lifted it. His face was gray with stubble and deep dark circles under his eyes. Something dark streaked across his cheek. His eyes reflected the light like glass. "You should not be down here," he said. "This place is closed." His voice sounded flat and empty, like he was repeating words he didn't understand. I backed up slowly. I tried to say, "Mrs. Wade told me to stay, but he cut me off. She is gone." Before I could breathe, he stepped down the stairs. I turned and ran toward the boiler room. My feet slapped the floor, my breath sharp and panicked. I shoved the boiler room door open and threw myself inside. There was no lock. I pressed my back against it, praying he wouldn't burst through. The handle twisted once, then again. His voice came through the door, low and rough. "You don't want to be running around out there. Things out there worse than me." I didn't answer, my pulse pounding. I lifted the flashlight and scanned the room. Pipes lined the walls. A rusted furnace hummed softly. And there, in the far corner, a metal door with a cracked red exit sign above it. I sprinted for it. The door screeched when I pulled it open, and the cold night air hit me like ice. I ran barefoot into the gravel yard behind the church. The flashlight died in my hand, plunging everything into darkness. I could hear steps behind me and someone calling something I couldn't understand. I stumbled onto the main road, my lungs burning. My car sat under the dead streetlight like a lifeline. I clawed the keys from my pocket, dropped them, picked them up, and managed to unlock the door. I jumped inside and hit the lock. The man walked into the lot, his steps slow and steady, his face blank like a mask. I turned the key. The engine sputtered, then died. I tried again. Nothing. On the third try, it roared to life. I slammed the gas, spinning gravel behind me as I sped out of Red Hollow without looking back. I drove until sunrise, the empty desert swallowing the road. When I finally reached a small town hours later, I pulled into a gas station. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped my wallet. The young cashier looked at me with concern. "You look like you got chased by ghosts," he joked lightly. I tried to laugh but couldn't. I asked him if he knew a place called Red Hollow. He frowned. Red Hollow burned down in a lightning fire years ago. Only the church foundation is left. Nobody lives out there. My breath caught. I saw the church, I said. The meal sign. People were there. He shrugged like he didn't know what else to say. On the way back to my car, a folded paper slipped from my hoodie pocket. I picked it up. It was a bulletin from Red Hollow Community Chapel. Sunday service, 9 a.m. The date was the same week, but the year printed was 25 years earlier. I stared at it until my vision blurred. I continued my drive east in silence. I didn't stop anywhere longer than a few minutes. Every town felt too quiet. Every diner felt like a trap. Every mirror reflection made my breath catch. And the strange things didn't end. One night at a small roadside diner, the cook placed a plate of eggs in front of me, then walked into a dark room behind the counter. I waited for him to return. Minutes passed. He never came back, not even when the kitchen door swayed gently like someone had just walked through. Another time, while driving past a field of dead grass, a handprint appeared slowly on the inside of my windshield, smearing the glass even though I was completely alone. And once, at a dead traffic signal, the car in front of me never moved. The driver sat still as stone, staring straight ahead, not blinking, not breathing, until I finally floored the gas and sped past him. By the time I reached my new city, I felt older, like the road had taken years from me. I slept for 2 days straight in my dorm bed. But sometimes I still wake to the feeling of someone standing at the bottom of stairs watching me, waiting, like that man in the basement. And sometimes, late at night, when the building is quiet and the hallway lights flicker, I swear I hear a soft voice whisper from somewhere deep and dark, "You should not be here. You should not be here." I always say the most frightening moments never happen near haunted houses or dark cemeteries. They happen on long, empty roads where the world feels too quiet and too far away to save you. My name is Mason Hale, and this happened a few years ago, right after a breakup and right after I quit the warehouse job that had drained the life out of me. My childhood friend, Jordan Vega, had landed a new construction job near the coast, and I had just found online work designing logos, so we thought a road trip would clear our heads before starting over. We planned a simple drive from Wisconsin to North Carolina, two friends looking for a reset, windows down, music loud, and miles of open land ahead of us. We loaded my old blue hatchback with everything we owned, clothes thrown into duffel bags, cheap camping gear we barely knew how to use, and enough snacks to live on for days. We wanted back roads instead of fast highways, and we wanted to see towns we had never seen before. That choice, the back roads, is the one thing I still replay in my head at night when I try to sleep. It was late afternoon when we crossed into northern Kentucky. The sky had a dusty orange glow that made every shadow look stretched and tired. Jordan was trying to connect his phone to the car speaker, complaining that it never paired the same way twice. I told him to play anything except the sad breakup songs he obsessed over. He laughed, saying I acted like the singers owed me rent money. We had been driving since morning, taking turns behind the wheel, and by the time the GPS suggested a faster route through the mountains, we were both hungry, tired, and almost out of energy. The road twisted like a snake through low hills covered in thick trees. We passed an abandoned barn, a lonely church with peeling white paint, and a tiny store that looked like it belonged in an old movie. After that, nothing but trees, endless trees. Jordan asked when we last saw another vehicle. I checked the rear mirror and saw nothing except empty road and orange sky. Maybe half an hour ago, I said, though it felt longer. He joked about hoping we didn't break down because he doubted roadside help came this far. I told him not to curse us, but right then the gas light blinked on. We both groaned. I had filled the car that morning but forgot how fast the miles add up on winding mountain roads. The GPS showed a town about 10 miles ahead called Redwood Bend. I had never heard of it, but it was the only sign of life in any direction. We reached it as the last of the daylight sank behind the hills. Redwood Bend wasn't really a town, not even close. It looked like a forgotten place someone left untouched for 50 years. A diner with boards nailed across its windows, a hardware shop missing half its sign, and a small post office with a crooked door that leaned to one side like it was tired of standing. But the strange part wasn't the buildings. It was the people. A woman in a faded dress swept her porch even though there was no dirt. An older man in overalls stood beside an empty wagon staring at nothing. A little boy sat on a tricycle in the middle of a yard facing away from us, not moving an inch. The way they turned their heads as we passed made my stomach twist. Their eyes followed the car, unblinking, cold, and too aware. At the end of the street stood an old gas station called Miller's Fuel. The sign hung crooked, paint chipped, and a single metal pump stood like a survivor of some disaster. Jordan asked if it worked. I said it had to because we didn't have a choice. The store smelled like rain-soaked metal and damp rubber. A soda machine hummed against the wall, and an old bell above the door let out a dull ring when I walked in. Behind the counter sat a man with thin gray hair, skin so pale it looked unfinished, and cloudy eyes that didn't blink right. He was reading a newspaper that looked older than both of us. "Evening," I said, setting down cash. "Pump one." $20. He lifted his eyes slowly, voice dry like sandpaper rubbing against stone, saying cash only, card machine broken. I handed him the bill. He typed something into the old register, and the drawer popped open with a soft ding. When he gave me the receipt, he leaned forward just a hair and whispered, "Do not stay here after dark." It wasn't friendly, and it wasn't dramatic. It sounded like something he wished someone had told him long ago. I asked him what he meant, but he looked down at the paper again, ignoring me like I had already left. I stepped outside and Jordan asked what the guy said. I told him nothing, just to hurry up. The pump was slow and stubborn. The air felt heavy and metallic like rain was coming, even though the sky was clear. The street was nearly empty now, but some of those same people were still on their porches, watching. The moment the pump clicked off, I tossed it back, jumped in, and pulled out faster than I meant to. Jordan asked why I was driving like it was an emergency. I told him I didn't want to stay here after dark. About 10 minutes down the road, I saw a pair of headlights behind us. Just one vehicle far back but steady. Jordan asked if it was someone from town. I said maybe, but when we turned, they turned. When we slowed, they slowed. When we sped up, they sped up. Jordan twisted around trying to see the shape. "Looks like an old truck," he said, "plate too dirty to read." The headlights flickered in a strange rhythm, not like a bad connection, more like someone covering and uncovering a flashlight by hand. Jordan asked if we should pull over. I told him absolutely not. He told me to punch the gas, so I did. The car groaned as we flew down the twisting road, tires catching gravel, engine whining in protest. The truck behind stayed exactly the same distance, never closer, never farther, pacing us like it already knew every turn we would take. We hit a fork with a wooden sign pointing toward a highway. I took the turn hard, dust exploding behind us, but the truck followed, its headlights pulsing brighter then dimmer like something breathing. The GPS calmly said to continue on an unmarked road for several miles. Jordan cursed the GPS, saying it felt like it was trying to lead us straight into a trap. I didn't answer because deep down, I feared he was right. The car scraped the bottom on a dip, and I held the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. After a long stretch, the headlights behind us vanished. Jordan whispered, asking if we lost them. I slowed just slightly, listening. No engine, no gravel crunch, no humming, only the sound of crickets outside the window. We stayed silent for several minutes before he finally let out a deep breath of relief. He said we needed to get to the highway fast. I agreed. Then something happened that made my blood freeze. A green sign appeared out of the dark. "Welcome to Redwood Bend." Jordan said no, absolutely not, because he knew we did not turn around. But there we were, rolling down the same street. The same boarded diner. The same houses, the same people. Except now, there were more of them. Dozens of them lining both sides of the street like they had been waiting for us to return. Their bodies were still, but every head had turned to watch us. One woman near the edge smiled, her teeth too white, too many, too deliberate. Jordan whispered that we needed to get out of there right now. I nodded, my heart banging in my chest, and then I saw it. The truck, parked across the road, engine humming softly, headlights flickering with that eerie breathing rhythm. The driver stepped out, tall, thin, wearing a wide hat pulled low. Even from far away, I felt something cold crawl under my skin. It felt like he wasn't looking at us, he was looking into us. Jordan whispered, "Go." I hit the gas, swerved around the truck, and shot down the street while the crowd watched without moving. The moment we reached the edge of town, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. At a scenic overlook beside the road, I heard a car door slam, even though no vehicle was there. Jordan asked if I had heard it too. I said yes, but told him not to look back. We flew down the road, not stopping until we reached the highway. When we finally merged onto the interstate, we both exhaled at the same time as a semi-truck passed us with a loud horn that felt like someone shouting, "Welcome back to the real world." We drove until we reached a cheap motel around 3 a.m., and we didn't sleep at all. Every sound made us jump. Every headlight passing the window made us freeze. In the morning, Jordan turned on the news and searched online. No mention of Redwood Bend anywhere. I checked the GPS history and the route was gone, wiped clean. Like the road, there had never existed. Jordan quit his new job a few weeks later, saying he felt watched everywhere he went. I laughed at first, but deep down I knew exactly what he meant. A few months later, I took a drive alone at night to clear my mind. At one point, I stopped by a forest road to stretch my legs, and when I walked back to my car, someone dragged a finger slowly across the side, leaving a line in the dust. No footprints. No sound. Nothing. Another night, I saw a silhouette standing on the side of the road in heavy fog. When I drove past and circled back minutes later, it was still there, exactly the same, not moving at all. Sometimes I lie in bed with my eyes closed and I swear I hear the old gas station man's voice whispering from far away, "Do not stay here after dark." And on nights when a single pair of headlights follows me a little too perfectly, I feel that same cold weight in my stomach and I remember Redwood Bend, waiting. I never thought I would take a trip like this alone, but life has a way of pushing you forward whether you're ready or not. My name is Sophie Lane, and back then I was a single mom struggling to breathe after my marriage fell apart. My son, Aiden, had just turned 3. Little guy with golden hair that wouldn't stay combed, big, curious eyes, and a laugh that could make the heaviest day feel lighter. That year, I felt like I was sinking under bills, loneliness, and the constant fear of failing him. My ex had left for Oregon, chasing a fresh start, and I hadn't felt calm in months. One night, after putting Aiden to bed, I looked at the wall map in the kitchen. The northern coast had always felt like a place where the air could wash worries away. I decided to drive, not just a day trip, but all the way up along Highway 42, through quiet towns and foggy cliffs, until I found somewhere that felt like peace. I rented a small cabin on the outskirts of a town called Clearwater Pines, surrounded by dense trees and the ocean mist. Before I left, my father-in-law Jim, a retired firefighter, handed me a small silver revolver wrapped in an old cloth. He said, "You'll be alone, kiddo. Keep this with you. Don't use it unless there's no other choice." I didn't like guns, but I didn't argue. I tucked it into the glove compartment, beneath the maps and snacks. We left just before sunrise. The car smelled like orange juice and baby wipes. Aiden babbling about the shapes of clouds and the funny noises the cows made along the roadside. I had my favorite soft music station on, the kind that made the world seem a little calmer. Traffic was light through the first few towns. By mid-morning, the sky was pink and gold, and for a moment, I felt almost free. By the time we hit the lonely stretch of Highway 42, the sun had dipped, leaving only fog and the sound of our tires slicing through the asphalt. Aiden had dozed off in his car seat. I noticed headlights behind me, far off but growing brighter, closer. A man in a rusty blue truck passed me, then slowed, matching my speed. He honked once, twice, then rolled the window down. I couldn't hear what he said, but his hand waved as if beckoning me. My stomach tightened. I glanced at Aiden and whispered, "Stay calm, Mommy's got you." I tried changing lanes, speeding up, slowing down. He mirrored every move. My pulse raced. Finally, my gas light flicked on. I hadn't seen a station for nearly 40 miles. My phone showed 1 bar of signal, blinking weakly. I turned it off, conserving battery. Ahead, a dim green glow, a small exit sign, Harbor Junction, 1 mile. I breathed a little easier. The man swerved in front of me as I took the exit, trying to block the road. I slammed my foot on the brake, then took a sharp turn down a dirt road leading to what looked like abandoned farmland. The headlights behind me followed, slow and steady. I whispered again to Aiden, voice firm but quiet. "We're okay, Mommy's got it." After a few miles, I reached a clearing large enough to turn around. I parked, switched off the headlights, and gripped the revolver in my hand. A cold wind brushed my face, the sound of crickets and my own heartbeat filling the night. The truck stopped a few yards away. The driver stepped out slowly, hands raised. He was not tall, mid-40s maybe, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. But there was something in his calm, calculating posture that made my skin crawl. "You need to pull over," he said, his voice unnervingly soft. "Something's wrong with your car." I raised the revolver slightly, warning him back. He froze, then smiled. "Be careful out here. Roads get lonely." And he returned to the truck, driving off into the fog. I stayed frozen until the taillights vanished. Aiden stirred, murmuring, "Are we at the ocean?" I swallowed hard and nodded, heart still racing. I drove to the gas station, filled up, and didn't stop until the ocean appeared at dawn, the sky blushing pink above the cliffs. The cabin was perfect. Cedar walls, salty breeze, the ocean whispering through pine trees. That night I cried for the first time in months. The revolver stayed by the bed just in case. But the fear didn't vanish completely. That road haunted me. On nights when I drive past strangers waving from the roadside, I just keep going. Some kindness isn't what it seems. Days later, something strange happened. The car horn started honking by itself while we were parked at the cabin. I jumped, running outside, but there was no one. A few nights later, I noticed an old Jeep blocking the road near the cabin, engine off, no driver inside. I turned around quickly, heart hammering. The most unsettling part came the next week. I was walking Aiden to a tiny diner in town, and I saw the same man 3 times. Each time, his clothes were different, and each time he just stared, silent, disappearing before I could approach. I kept my distance, never letting Aiden out of my sight. Every drive felt dangerous, every shadow suspicious. My mind stretched thin between fear and exhaustion. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak of the cabin, every whistle of wind felt amplified, and sometimes I thought I heard someone walking outside while I stared at the windows, gun in hand. One night, around 2:15 a.m., I woke to a faint glow outside the cabin. The moonlight made the fog look like rolling ghosts. I peered through the blinds. In the clearing, the Jeep was back, engine cold. I could make out the silhouette of a man standing perfectly still. My hands shook. My revolver felt heavy, almost alive in my grip. I whispered, "Not tonight." I never saw him approach the cabin. By the time dawn broke, the Jeep had vanished. I questioned myself, my sanity, wondering if exhaustion and fear had made shadows seem real. But then, at the diner, the same man appeared again, smiling faintly as if nothing had happened. The road trip had started as a search for peace, but it became a test of vigilance and survival. Every mile, every turn carried the potential for danger, and every stranger became a question mark. I learned to trust my instincts, to listen to the silence, and to understand that some roads don't forgive mistakes. Even months later, driving down familiar highways, I flinch at shadows, at headlights that linger too long, at the whisper of tires behind me. Aiden sleeps in the back seat, blissfully unaware, and I grip the steering wheel, revolver hidden beneath maps and snacks, reminding myself that some encounters leave permanent marks. The fear never left completely, but it taught me something essential. Awareness can save you when life turns sinister, and sometimes survival means staying calm, ready, and wary of a world that looks ordinary but hides the extraordinary. I never thought one road trip could change my life, yet here I am, still shaking thinking about it. My name is Ryan. I work as a freelance photographer now, traveling for small town shoots, abandoned places, and quiet highways. It's not glamorous, often exhausting, but it gives me freedom. Weeks had passed after my last assignment ended, and I found myself stuck at home, scrolling aimlessly, drinking stale coffee, wishing for something to break the monotony. That's when my friend Leo called from Denver. He needed a lift back to his hometown in Montana after finishing a freelance film project. He suggested flying, faster and easier, but flying never gave you stories. I said yes immediately. We left early on a Friday morning. It was still dark when I drove out of my apartment in Kansas City. The air was crisp, sharp, and cold enough to sting my cheeks. Leo was half asleep in the passenger seat, hugging a small travel pillow, murmuring about needing caffeine. My old sedan hummed against the empty streets, the lights reflecting off the wet pavement from last night's rain. As the sun rose behind distant hills, the horizon glowed orange and golden, eerie and beautiful at the same time. We stopped at a tiny diner near Salina. The waitress, older with a scratchy voice and heavy eyeliner, kept our coffee topped up, asking where we were going. "Montana," I said proudly. She smirked. "Long drive, kids. Make sure you've got patience, gas, and a working head." Leo whispered under his breath, "Or a few brain cells to lose along the way." We laughed and left, the wind rushing past, the world opening wide. Hours passed. Rolling plains, cornfields stretching endlessly, abandoned billboards, and the occasional truck stop blurred together. Somewhere in eastern Wyoming, I realized I'd been behind the wheel for almost 10 hours straight. Leo offered to drive, but I felt fine, zoned out, almost hypnotized by the monotony. He leaned back, closing his eyes, murmuring, "Wake me if we hit a storm." I grinned. Deal. Night fell faster than expected, black washing over the endless road. My gas light blinked on just as the last glow of the sun disappeared behind the hills. Leo and our other friend, Mark, who had joined last minute, were both asleep. Mark sprawled across the back seat, headphones in, scrolling on his phone. I checked the GPS. The next town was 35 miles away, but a tiny fuel station popped up. Red Creek Fuel. Nothing else around for miles. The exit ramp curved sharply into darkness. No cars, only the soft whistle of the wind through the dry grass. When the station appeared, I had the first instinct that something was wrong. The lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across cracked concrete. The pumps glowed faintly. The building behind them shuttered and locked. Not a single car in the lot. I parked near one pump, stepping out into the cold that bit through my jacket. I tried the card reader. Dead. Then I noticed a small lever on the side of the pump. I pulled it. Gas started flowing. "Old school," I muttered. Then I heard it, a faint voice, male, saying, "Hey!" My body froze. The shadows around the building seemed thick, swallowing everything, making the air heavy. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. Nothing. Then I heard a slow, deliberate whistle. 3 notes, then silence. My pulse accelerated. I turned back to the car. Leo was still asleep. Mark hadn't moved. Another whistle, louder this time. Then the voice, "Hey," sharp, angry, urgent. Finally, I saw him. A man in a mud-stained gray coat, hood up, strange bright green shorts beneath. His legs were pale in the dim light, movements stiff. "Look at me," he shouted. His tone wasn't normal. It was raw, demanding, like he expected recognition for something ancient. I froze, slipping on spilled gas. My hand shot for the car door as Leo sat up, eyes wide. "What's wrong?" he asked. The man's head jerked toward him, wide, glassy eyes reflecting the pump lights, lips cracked and dry. Then he ran around the back of the station, gravel crunching under his shoes. A door slammed, an engine growled, and he vanished. We didn't talk. The tension was heavy, thick, almost visible. I handed Leo the keys. We drove off in silence, headlights cutting through the endless black, rattling soda cans in the back, the only sound. "Maybe he's homeless," Leo suggested. I didn't answer. Hours later, we found a motel near Sheridan. The clerk, an old man with liver spots and hands trembling from age, handed us the key. "Coming from the east?" he asked. I nodded. "Don't stop near Red Creek. Weird things happen there. Lights, noises. Folks say the place is cursed." My stomach twisted. Red Creek Fuel. I nodded silently and went to the room. Locked the door twice, shoved a chair under the handle. Sleep barely came. Every car passing by made me flinch, waiting to hear that same whistle. The next morning, sunlight made everything seem normal. Leo joked. Mark scrolled endlessly. By the time we reached Helena, Montana, the encounter felt unreal, like a nightmare dissolving in daylight. But a week later, scrolling local news, I froze. A body had been found near Red Creek Fuel, a man in his 40s wearing a gray coat and green shorts. Missing for months, no ID. I still don't know what we saw, a ghost, a copycat, or something else entirely. But sometimes, driving alone at night, I hear that same three-note whistle echo in my mind, and my hands start shaking on the wheel. Over the next week, I couldn't shake the memory of Red Creek. The plains that had seemed endless now felt like eyes watching, stretching miles without end, the wind carrying whispers. I kept my camera on the passenger seat, but it offered no comfort. I'd look up from the wheel, scanning the horizon, half expecting to see the man in the gray coat standing on the side of the road, his hooded head turning slowly to watch. On our way back home, we took different routes to avoid the memory. Rolling hills, forest patches, abandoned roadside attractions, all seemed alive, shifting just at the edge of vision. At one gas stop, the lights inside flickered as if someone had moved through. No one was there. I checked the cameras and the pumps, nothing. Still, the sensation that someone was following, waiting, grew stronger. We drove through small towns where everyone seemed to look at us a little too long. Store clerks with hollow eyes, stray dogs staring without blinking. One night, stopping for a break at a deserted rest area, I noticed lights switching on and off inside the empty building, as if someone was walking, moving, watching. Then there was the burned car we passed on the roadside near a curve. Flames long out, still smoldering, no driver, no passengers, no emergency call. My stomach twisted. Leo joked, trying to break the tension, but even he didn't meet my eyes. Something about that car felt deliberate, like a warning. We tried to keep spirits up with music and jokes, but the road seemed endless, stretching and folding in ways that made the miles disorienting. Shadows seemed to twist, roads felt longer, winds sounded like whispers. One night, our headlights caught a figure standing in the middle of the lane. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding, but when we stopped, nothing. Not a footprint, not a scratch, nothing except the smell of wet dirt. Mark, usually the calmest, started twitching at noises, whispering about seeing a face in the back of the woods, pale and grinning, watching us. Leo kept his jokes thinner and quieter, scanning behind every passing car. I realized we were all fragile in ways that long stretches of empty road bring out. Near the Black Hills again, we encountered a car behind us that flashed high beams repeatedly. Every time I glanced at the driver, their face was hidden in darkness. The lights flicked on and off, taunting. My pulse hit fast, every instinct screaming to move, yet we couldn't shake the feeling that turning would bring something worse. Each night in motels, I couldn't sleep. Doors locked, windows shut tight. I imagined the man in gray coat, the whistle echoing through empty hallways, scratching at walls, moving silently. Leo would mutter in his sleep, "Just a bad dream." Mark's phone lights would flicker at odd times, messages from unknown numbers, three-note emojis, strange symbols. By the time we reached Helena, Montana, the sense of being watched, hunted, didn't leave. Rolling roads, quiet plains, every abandoned gas station along the way now had a face I feared. The world seemed alive with something ancient and angry. Weeks later, back home in Kansas City, I was scrolling through local forums when I saw it. Red Creek Fuel flagged in posts as cursed, haunted, dangerous. People shared sightings, voices in the dark, lights moving inside abandoned buildings. Some described a man, hooded, shorts, oddly bright, moving stiffly, disappearing into shadows. Now, even in daylight when I drive, I glance at shadows differently. The hum of my engine, the wind, the long empty roads. They remind me that some things you see on lonely trips do not stay in the past. The whistle sometimes creeps into my mind, 3 notes, slow, deliberate. My hands tremble, and I know it is still there, somewhere, waiting. I keep my camera with me. Not for work, not for memories. I keep it in case I see him again, gray coat, pale legs, the 3-note whistle. Maybe then someone will believe me, maybe not. Either way, the road is no longer safe, and I'll never forget the first time a trip meant freedom and ended with fear. A week later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Silence. Then the whistle. Then the whistle. 3 notes, then nothing. I dropped the phone. My pulse raced. Sometimes I drive late at night, empty highways stretching before me, lights dim, wind whispering. I hear it, always, always. The whistle, always 3 notes. I never thought one drive could turn into the worst night of my life, but it did. That Friday evening, the sky was bruised purple, and the air smelled like damp earth and distant smoke, the kind of smell that creeps under your skin. My name's Archer. I grew up in Cedar Falls, but for work I was living just outside the tiny town of Maple Ridge. I had a job installing and repairing security systems for small banks in rural areas. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid rent and bought coffee, and at 26, that was enough. I liked my job because I could be on the road most of the time, alone with my thoughts and music, and no one breathing down my neck. That weekend, my older sister Jessica decided to throw a surprise birthday party for her husband Matt. He had never been to his senior prom, and she wanted to give him a chance to experience it, even if it was 20 years late. She rented the old gym at Westwood High in Pine Hollow, a town so small that most people knew everyone by name. It'll be nostalgic, she said over the phone, smiling like nothing could go wrong. Pine Hollow had one main street, a single gas station, a diner that smelled like fried food and motor oil, and a few scattered houses. Beyond that, it was forest and farmland. Gravel roads twisted like rivers, and cell service disappeared the moment you left the main street. When she told me the plan, I laughed. That place? The one with one gas station and a diner that hasn't changed since the 70s? She nodded. Exactly. Matt's going to love it. I wanted to argue, but she was pregnant with their second child, stressed out of her mind, and determined to make it perfect. So I promised I'd help. That afternoon, my boss called. Hey Archer, sorry, but we need you on site until at least 7, he said over the phone. My stomach sank. I promised my sister I'd be there early, I groaned. He shrugged. Overtime's yours if you want it. Money talks. I sighed and texted Jessica that I'd meet her later. Just follow the GPS, she warned. Don't try to shortcut through the back roads. They can confuse even locals. Got it, I replied, trying to sound calm. By the time I clocked out, it was already 6:20 p.m. and the sun was slipping behind the hills. I filled my tank, grabbed a coffee, and started the drive north. At first, the highway was smooth and easy. But as I followed Google Maps off the main road, the road narrowed to a twisting gravel ribbon, surrounded by dense trees. The light turned gold, then deep orange, and shadows began stretching across the road. I felt a thrill, the kind of freedom you get on open roads at sunset. I arrived at the gym around 7:45 p.m. Jessica and a couple of her friends were hanging lights and blowing up balloons. Finally, she teased when I walked in. Traffic? I laughed. Work. You know how it is. We finished decorating quickly, stringing colored lights and setting up tables. The party started at 8:30 p.m., and Matt was genuinely surprised. There was laughter, cheap beer, bad dancing, and nostalgia thick in the air. By 10:50 p.m., most guests had left. Matt had one too many whiskey shots, so his friend drove him and Jessica home. I stayed behind to help clean with a friend of hers, a girl named Claire. We stacked chairs, swept floors, and carried trash to the dumpster behind the building. The night air hit me like a wall when I stepped outside, cold, damp, and alive. Crickets chirped, and a lone dog barked in the distance. The parking lot lights threw a weak orange glow, leaving the edge of the surrounding woods in deep shadow. Claire yawned. "You sure you can drive back now?" she asked. "It's an hour," I replied. "I'm fine," she warned. "Be careful on those back roads." Weird stuff happens out there. I laughed at first. Meth labs, drunk wanderers, ghost stories. I'd heard them all. But as I turned onto the narrow road leading out of Pine Hollow, the trees seemed to close in. Google Maps recalculated when I missed a small green highway sign. I ended up on a parallel gravel road, darker, narrower. I found a small clearing about 200 yards ahead and tried to turn around. That's when I saw it. In the rearview mirror, A pale figure flickered in the red glow of my brake lights. At first, I thought it was a reflection, a stray trash bag, maybe a post. But the figure stepped closer. Jeans, dark t-shirt, long black hair. Its face was featureless, smooth and white like porcelain, two hollow black holes for eyes staring straight at me. My heart froze. Halloween decoration? No houses, no driveways, just dark woods behind it. One step closer. My stomach churned. I slammed the accelerator, tires spinning, gravel, heart hammering. I didn't stop until I hit the main highway outside Maple Ridge. I tried to convince myself it was a prank or someone high wandering the forest, but the unease followed me home. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Made it home okay? I typed back, laughing nervously. Yeah, just took the long way. I didn't tell her about the face, the way it moved silently behind me. A few nights later, I had to drive back that way for work. It was dark, the kind of dark that made the trees look alive, reaching across the gravel road. That's when my GPS glitched. The blue dot representing my car froze, and a red dot appeared behind me, moving in perfect sync. I blinked, heart pounding, but the GPS wouldn't recalculate. A white van appeared on the shoulder ahead, all windows covered with curtains, no lights on inside. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed to turn around. I obeyed, taking a small side road I didn't know well. Gravel crunched under the tires, shadows flickering at the edge of my vision. Suddenly, under a low bridge, someone slammed the roof of my car. I screamed, swerving hard to avoid the sides. Nothing there when I looked, just empty darkness. The trees seemed to grow taller, closing in on the road. Every mile I drove, it felt like the forest was following me, the branches scraping the roof, the gravel crunching louder than it should. I saw shadows flicker at the edges of my headlights, figures that disappeared when I blinked. I tried to rationalize it, deer, old branches, my tired mind playing tricks, but deep down, I knew it was something else. I took a wrong turn onto a road labeled only on old maps. The GPS still showed the red dot behind me, perfectly matching my every move. Panic set in, cold and tight in my chest. Then I heard the sound, slow, deliberate footsteps behind my car. Gravel shifting, soft thumps, like someone walking carefully to stay in rhythm with me. I pressed the accelerator harder. I passed an abandoned farmhouse. Windows broken, paint peeling, a swing hanging crooked from the porch. Something moved in the upstairs window. Just for a second, a pale shape, featureless. My heart jumped. I swerved onto the next road. Then, I saw another figure by the roadside, standing completely still. Same white, featureless face, black holes for eyes, no clothes that mattered, no expression, just watching me. I slammed my foot on the brake, spinning the car on loose gravel. The figure didn't flinch. I remembered what Claire had said about the stories locals tell, ghosts, people wandering out of the woods, meth addicts, anything, but this didn't feel like any of that. This felt organized, waiting, patient. I reached a clearing and tried to catch my breath. My phone had no signal, GPS red dot still following, and then I heard a faint tapping. Not from the bridge this time, but the roof again, slow and steady. My hands were sweaty on the steering wheel. I couldn't think. I couldn't run. I just drove. I passed another van, this one older, rusty, windows blacked out. The driver's side window rolled down slowly, but no one was inside. I blinked. My heart hammered. I didn't stop. Gravel crunched under tires. Trees loomed closer. Shadows shifted. Something moved in my mirrors, just behind me, pale and silent. I realized I couldn't keep following the roads. They all led deeper into the woods. I stopped in the middle of a stretch, hands shaking. That's when I heard breathing. Slow, measured, behind my car. I looked in the mirror. Nothing. Then the faintest flicker. One step. Then two. Then more. The GPS red dot was gone, replaced with a white dot that seemed to float behind me. I floored it again, praying for the main highway. My car fishtailed, tires throwing gravel, branches scratching the roof. And then, the most terrifying thing, I saw another face in my mirror, pale, blank, just staring. and more, dozens more, flickering between the trees, all featureless, all watching me. I didn't stop. The road finally led me to a small gas station near Maple Ridge, neon lights buzzing weakly in the early morning fog. I parked, shaking, hands numb on the steering wheel. I stayed there for almost an hour, engine running, heart trying to slow. No one came. No van, no figures, no red dot on a GPS. Just fog. Weeks later, I mentioned it at work. My coworker Brandon looked up mid-bite. "You were out near Pine Hollow?" he asked. I nodded. "They found a guy out there last year, dead in the woods, wearing one of those blank masks, the ones from Party City," he said. I stopped breathing. Coincidence? Maybe. But every night since, when I drive on dark back roads, I see flickers in my mirrors, shadows that vanish when I glance directly. Sometimes I swear the pale, hollow faces are just behind me, waiting for the moment I make a mistake. And the more I think about it, the more I realize I'm never safe on these roads. The highways are fine, the city streets are fine, but the back roads, the gravel ribbons through the woods, they remember. They remember everyone who drives alone, everyone who thinks they're safe. I see them in the trees. I hear them in the branches. They are always there, waiting, patient, silent. And sometimes, just sometimes, I swear I see them step onto the road in front of me, faces blank and staring, and I know that if I stop, they won't just watch. I never imagined that a summer drive could turn into something I would never forget. Back then, in July, I was 22, still floating between adulthood and the last remnants of my teenage recklessness. I had just started working as a graphic designer, mostly stuck in coffee shops and co-working spaces, staring at screens all day, and driving alone felt like the only real escape. Each mile of open road gave me a strange sense of control, as if I could outrun everything I couldn't handle in life. That morning, I left my small apartment in Portland, Maine, heading toward a quiet town near Carlisle, Pennsylvania, to visit my friend Sophie. Her parents were out for the weekend, leaving us to do whatever chaos we wanted. Cheap wine, staying up late watching movies, playing card games, and arguing over the best Netflix series. My little silver Honda Civic was packed with snacks, water bottles, a duffel bag full of random thrift store clothes, and my laptop with unfinished design projects I pretended not to care about. The sky was pale blue, washed clean, and the air smelled like heat and asphalt as I pulled onto the highway. I played my playlist loud, singing along to songs I barely knew the words to, feeling untouchable, free, invincible. 2.5 hours later, I crossed into Pennsylvania, the road bending between soft hills and farmland so wide I could see clouds gliding across the ground. I decided to stop for gas and a snack at a small, almost forgotten station tucked along a dirt road that ran parallel to the highway. The pumps rattled when you started them, the mini-mart looked sun-bleached and lonely, and the air smelled like gasoline and fried food. I stepped out, stretching my legs and locking the car when I heard a voice behind me. "Hey there," it said, calm, almost casual, but it made the hair on my neck rise. I turned. A man stood there, mid-30s, maybe a little older, stocky, wearing a faded green hoodie and jeans that looked worn at the knees. His dark hair was slicked back, and a scruffy beard shadowed his jaw. His eyes were sharp, too sharp, staring at me as if he was trying to figure out everything about me at once. "Connecticut plates, huh?" he asked. "You traveling alone?" His smile didn't reach his eyes, and that was the part that made me freeze. "Yeah, just passing through," I said, my voice a little too high. "Where you headed?" He asked, stepping slightly closer. "Just enough to make me uncomfortable." "A few hours west," I muttered, trying to keep my distance. He laughed low and uneven. "Traveler, huh?" He said, "I'm killing time before I meet some friends. You like mini golf?" I shook my head. "Movie then." "There's a small theater down the road," he added, but something in his tone made it feel like a trap. "No thanks," I said. "Really, I have plans." He stepped closer, and I could smell the mix of cigarettes and something metallic, greasy. My stomach tightened, and I backed toward the store. "You sure?" he said, voice low, his grin widening. "Wouldn't hurt to hang out a bit." I forced a laugh and walked faster. As I entered the store, his voice rose behind me. "Damn, you're gorgeous." I froze. People turned, families paused, and my skin crawled. I ducked into the air-conditioned cool, heart hammering, and locked myself in the bathroom stall. I pulled out my phone and texted Sophie. "Weird guy at the gas station, won't leave me alone." "Stay inside," she texted back. "Wait it out." I counted the seconds, listening to footsteps on the tile, waiting until it felt safe. When I finally stepped back into the store, I didn't see him, and relief hit me in waves. I bought water, snacks, a bag of sour gummies, anything normal to remind me the world wasn't completely dangerous. Stepping back outside, my stomach dropped. His black pickup truck was parked on the dirt road next to the station, angled toward the lot, headlights off. He waved, grinning like a predator. I slammed the door, started the car, and tore onto the ramp, tires squealing. He followed immediately, merging behind me, keeping pace, and my chest felt like it would burst. I called Sophie. "He's behind me," I said, voice shaking. She told me to take the next exit, any exit with a police station, and sent me directions. Every car that passed made me flinch. He stayed behind, just watching, breathing down my back through the rearview mirror. At one point, a police-looking car appeared behind me. No license plate, no lights, just silent and dark, following. I forced my foot on the gas, weaving through traffic, but it stayed with me for miles. Then it happened. A man stepped into the road suddenly. I slammed on the brakes, tires skidding. When I blinked, he was gone. No trace, no skid marks, nothing but the empty road stretching ahead. My hand shook so badly I nearly crashed again. I took the exit Sophie sent and held my breath. The truck and the strange car both vanished somewhere behind me. My hands slick with sweat, I finally pulled into her driveway, locked the doors, and poured wine like it could erase the day. The weekend was surreal, fun, but tense. Every slow car on the road, every shadow near the windows, sent my heart racing. It was supposed to be a simple trip, a few days of escape. Instead, it felt like I was being hunted. Years later, in Boston, I told another friend about the encounter. She loved true crime, murder cases, road killers. When I described him, she froze, opened her laptop, and showed me a photo. Same eyes, same grin, a man arrested years later for a series of killings along highways in the Northeast. The resemblance was horrifying. I never saw him again, but the memory stuck. The dirt road, the honking, the stare, the truck, it lingered in my mind, and now I never stopped looking at the faces around me at rest stops. The next time I drove alone, it felt different. Every car that followed, every man who lingered too close, every shadow on the road made me check the mirrors twice. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can see headlights behind me, slow, deliberate, just waiting. One evening, while refueling at a small station near Harrisburg, the pump screen lit up with my name. I hadn't typed it. My fingers hovered, trembling, before I tore away and ran to my car. Driving off, I glanced in the rearview mirror. There, on the dirt road behind the station, a figure leaned against a tree, just watching. The memory of that first chase stayed with me, and I realized the road was never truly empty. Every highway, every rest stop, every forgotten town could hide something dark, waiting. You never know who might be behind you or how close they are until it's too late. The tension followed me home, seeped into my dreams. I started checking maps obsessively, memorizing escape routes, wondering if the black truck would appear again, if the man who vanished in front of me would come back. The paranoia became part of me. Driving alone was no longer freedom, it was survival. Months later, driving to a client in Harrisburg, I noticed a car behind me, dark, no plates, matching speed with mine. My hands gripped the wheel tight enough to leave marks. I forced myself not to panic. I'd seen this before. I knew what to do. I exited at the nearest police station, heart racing, and the car didn't follow. But the memory stayed. Sometimes, I imagined the black truck and the faceless man could appear anywhere, just waiting for the perfect moment to make a move. Each highway is a test. Each rest stop a potential trap. The fear doesn't go away. It only waits, patient and cold, like the shadow of something I almost saw but never truly understood. Even now, I drive cautiously, eyes constantly scanning, hands never leaving the wheel. The wind, the road, the distant hum of engines, they all remind me of that day, that dirt road, the stare, and the sudden, terrifying chase. Life is strange. You think you're free until someone decides you're not. And sometimes, in the silence of a summer highway, I hear the honk of a horn that shouldn't exist, or the soft creak of a door that isn't mine, and I remember, luck isn't protection. Awareness is. And some things cross your path, not to harm, but to mark, to test, to let you know the road will never be empty again. I never thought a small mistake on a sunny Saturday could turn into the most terrifying hours of my life. It started as a perfect morning in Cedar Valley, a quiet town in northern New Jersey, sunlight spilling between tall maple trees, the smell of fresh coffee and morning dew lingering in the air. I had just turned 24. My girlfriend Mia and I were planning a weekend escape to visit her cousin's old farmhouse, a slow drive through the countryside we had been looking forward to for weeks. Mia's little terrier, Max, a ball of nervous white energy, bounced between our legs as we packed the car, whining every time I shifted a bag. Everything seemed normal, calm, safe. That calm wouldn't last long. We left Cedar Valley around 8:30 a.m., the streets nearly empty except for a few early commuters. I drove down Pine Street, a wide 4-lane road lined with gas stations and diners, the sunlight glinting off the asphalt. Mia sat beside me, scrolling her phone, confirming directions. 20 minutes to her cousin's place, she said. Perfect. I smiled, fastening my seatbelt and checking Max in the back. His small paws tapped against the seat as if he sensed my nerves. The summer air was warm, carrying the faint scent of grass and asphalt. We played soft indie music from the playlist Mia had made, a mix of calm morning tunes for the first stretch of the drive. Everything felt right, until it didn't. Around 8:50 a.m., as we approached the town outskirts, a dark green sedan shot past us from the left lane, almost clipping the front of our car. I slammed on the brakes, sending coffee from the cup holder onto my lap. Max yelped, scrambling under the seat, and Mia grabbed the dashboard, her nails digging into the plastic. "Jesus!" she screamed. My heart pounded, adrenaline roaring in my veins. I glimpsed the sedan in my rearview mirror. Its windows were darkly tinted, the driver leaning slightly out the window, staring. "Just ignore him," Mia whispered, but it was too late. Anger and fear collided in my chest, and I instinctively raised my hand and flipped him off. A flash, a single motion. The man leaned further out, yelling something I couldn't hear over the music. His voice was sharp, almost manic. He had messy black hair under a backward baseball cap, sunglasses, and a twisted smile that made my stomach knot. I kept my eyes on the road, refusing to acknowledge him. "Don't stop," Mia whispered, but he wouldn't leave us alone. He swerved to match our speed, pointing for us to pull over, and then he did something that froze me. He reached down and grabbed a brown glass bottle from the passenger seat, threw it at us. It shattered against the car's side, glass spraying inside, Max yelping and trembling. Panic set in. I jerked the wheel onto Oak Lane, a narrow suburban street lined with old oak trees, hoping to lose him. He followed without hesitation, engine roaring. I pressed the gas, weaving through the streets, Elm, Willow, and Grant. The adrenaline burned in my hands, white-knuckled, as Max whimpered in the back seat, ears flattened. Mia tried calling the police, her hands shaking violently. She dropped her phone twice before I grabbed it, instructing her to put it on speaker. "We're being chased," she cried. "He's throwing bottles. He won't stop." The dispatcher's calm voice cut through the chaos. "Drive to the nearest public area. Do not stop." "Are you hurt?" Mia shook her head, tears running down her cheeks. "No, but he's crazy. He's chasing us, and he's insane," she whispered. I muttered under my breath. "He wants a reaction. He wants us scared." We took a sharp turn down Mill Road, a long stretch with barely any cars, hoping to find a gas station or public place. The green sedan stayed right behind, swerving dangerously close. Once, a bottle hit our rear window dead on, cracking the glass instantly, spiderwebbing across the surface. Max barked, small and frantic. Mia held him close, whispering calming words. though I could hear the tremble in her voice. We passed an old car wash on the corner of Mill and Briar. Its machines were still. The lights flickered as we drove past, and for a terrifying moment, I saw a dark figure standing outside the window, frozen, watching. I slammed the brakes instinctively. Mia's eyes widened. "Did you see that?" she whispered, voice shaking. I nodded, swallowing hard, my pulse hammering in my ears. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The sedan was still there, silent now, as if waiting, almost ghost-like. I turned sharply into the lot of a small motel, thinking safety might be there. The parking lot was dim, neon signs buzzing. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant. The night clerk nodded at us, his expression neutral. We parked, doors locked, Max shaking on the backseat floor. I forced a smile at Mia. "It's okay. He can't follow us here." But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. We went upstairs to our room, and the horror didn't stop. Heavy footsteps echoed outside the room, deliberate, slow, circling. The building only had one level. I froze, listening. Mia pressed herself against the wall, eyes wide. Max growled low in his throat, hackles up. I tried to laugh it off. "Old pipes," I said, but my voice sounded hollow. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Shadows stretched across the room, shapes flickering with the failing light of the hallway bulb. The hum of the air conditioner grew into a sinister growl in my mind. Outside the window, I saw a figure, still and silent, staring at us through the glass. My fingers clenched the sheets. I wanted to run, but my feet were rooted. Every instinct screamed danger, yet the locked room was both a sanctuary and a trap. Around midnight, a soft whistle cut through the darkness, high, lonely. I froze. No one was around, the street outside silent. The whistle repeated, echoing under the motel overpass nearby, sending a chill down my spine. Max whimpered, shivering against Mia. I whispered, stay calm," though my voice shook. By morning, pale sunlight spilled into the parking lot. We were alive, but changed. The freedom of the road, once thrilling, now felt like a trap. Every white or green car made my chest tighten. Max refused to get out of the car for hours, and Mia held my hand silently, both of us shaken. The road ahead felt uncertain, every shadow and passing vehicle a potential threat. Even weeks later, I catch myself checking the rearview mirror, heart pounding when a sedan lingers behind me. Sleep is harder now. 3 a.m. feels like the dead zone where he might appear. The terror left a mark that ordinary life cannot erase. Because the truth is, he's still out there, somewhere, waiting. And next time, he may not be satisfied with bottles. Every detail, every sound of that day is burned into my mind. The shattering glass, the whistle under the overpass, the flickering motel lights, Max trembling, Mia's tears, the mad smile of a stranger who could appear anywhere. That summer Saturday should have been ordinary, calm, simple. Instead, it was the day I learned the road has eyes, and the wrong moment can bring someone straight out of darkness into your world. Even now, driving alone, the slightest shift of headlights, the shadow of a green sedan in the distance, is enough to send my pulse racing. I know it's irrational, yet rational thought doesn't matter when fear owns you. The road is no longer just asphalt and trees. It's a stage for someone else's madness. The fear of being followed, hunted, observed, this is the new reality, one that gnaws at the edges of my life. We finished the trip, eventually reaching the countryside, her cousin's farmhouse, a quiet refuge from the chaos. But the peace was fragile. Max slept under my arm, ears flicking at every distant sound. Mia rarely spoke, eyes scanning the horizon for shadows that weren't there. Even in the safety of family and open fields, the memory of that man, that smile, the bottles, the chase, haunted every moment. It's strange how fast terror can transform the familiar into the terrifying. The roads we once loved for freedom, the turns we knew by heart, the quiet streets of Cedar Valley, all became reminders that danger can follow from nowhere. I never flipped anyone off again, not because I was polite, but because I understood that sometimes simple actions have consequences that ripple far beyond your control. Sometimes at night, I still imagine him watching, standing on the side of some empty road, waiting for the next mistake, the next flash of frustration. And I know that, if he comes again, I might not be lucky. That Saturday, a small gesture sparked the storm, and the storm is far from over. I drove that highway because it was supposed to be simple, the kind of straight stretch where the world repeats over and over, long fields, crooked billboards, and the same sun-baked pavement rolling under the tires like a long belt pulling you forward whether you want it or not. It was the first warm week of late spring, the kind of day when the breeze feels slow and sticky, and bugs spin in the air like dust caught in syrup. I had been on the road since mid-morning, leaving early because my two youngest kids needed checkups in a little town that looked new enough to smell like wet paint. My name is Mara, and before that day I worked as a library clerk at a small community center in Rembrook County, a quiet job, safe, predictable, the kind of work that makes you feel comfortable with the world because you think you understand it. But long before I worked there, before I married, before my kids were born, I did something else that people sometimes tease me about. I told stories. Real ones, strange ones, stories I heard from travelers who used the old rest stops before they closed down, stories about dark roads and things seen from back seats, stories about people who left home and never came back. Maybe that is why what happened stays with me. Maybe part of me already knew the road could turn on a person fast. That morning, my oldest two were with my husband, and I only had the younger ones with me. Milo was 3, all curls and questions, the kind of kid who narrates everything he sees. My baby girl, Lila, was barely a year old, all smiles and soft chatter. They were buckled in the back of my dusty gray Pathfinder, their juice boxes already half empty by the time we reached the clinic in Dunwich Grove. Dunwich Grove was hardly a town, more like a few fresh buildings beside a new exit ramp, a place where dirt still clung to every sidewalk and empty fields spread out like forgotten pages in a book. I remember stepping out of the clinic after their checkups, the sun leaning low, turning everything warm gold. The parking lot was long and bare, the kind of place where sound seems to travel slower because there is so much open space around you. The receptionist, a woman named Kendra, locked the doors behind her with a tired smile. I buckled the kids in, slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and heard that cruel little click. I tried again, 2 clicks this time, sharp and annoying. My heartbeat dropped a little. I muttered something under my breath, and Milo said softly from the back, "Mama, the car's sleepy." I smiled because he always made things softer even when they felt heavy, but my chest still felt tight. I got out, opened the hood, and stared at the hot metal like I would magically understand it. That is when I realized the lot was empty. Everyone had gone. Even Kendra's little blue sedan was gone. The cicadas were already starting up in the trees. It felt too early for them, but there they were, loud and steady. I swallowed, closed the hood, picked up both kids, and went back to the locked glass doors. I knocked hard, and after a moment, Kendra opened them again, surprised. She let me inside, handed me the heavy phone book from under the counter, and I found a number for a repair place somewhere nearby, Brantley's Auto Service, Thornfield Road. A man answered, introduced himself as Dax, and said he could send someone, but it might take a bit. "That is fine," I said. "We are at the new medical plaza in Dunwich Grove, the one with the green sign." He said he knew the place and would send someone in, maybe half an hour, 40 minutes. I thanked Kendra and took the kids back out. The sun was sinking lower, stretching shadows long across the pavement. I settled the kids into their seats again, rolled the windows down, and tried to keep everyone calm. Milo hummed. Lila tapped her hands against her stuffed cow. Time moved slow. Then I heard gravel crunching. A pickup turned into the empty lot, moving with that slow, steady pace that makes dust rise in a soft cloud behind it. It was an old truck, off-white, dented in the front, toolbox rattling in the back. No logo, no sticker, nothing that said it belonged to anyone but itself. A man stepped out, tall and broad, built like someone who lifted more than tools for a living. His beard was rough, his cap shadowed his eyes, and his jeans were streaked with dirt like he had knelt in something darker earlier. He approached with a half smile and said, "Evening, Mom," in a way that sounded friendly, but also carried something else beneath it, something watchful. I nodded and told him the Jeep would not start. and he said he was from Brantley's. My stomach eased a little because I wanted to believe that. He lifted the hood, moved his hands fast, too fast maybe, and kept glancing around the lot like he expected someone else to show up. "You from this area?" he asked after a minute, voice casual but not warm. "Not really," I said. "Just here for checkups. We live out in a different county." "Long road to be out here this late," he said slowly, eyes sliding toward the edge of the lot. I tried to laugh, tried to make things ordinary again. He said it was not the battery, maybe a loose wire. But he did not fix anything. He just touched things lightly, not enough to do real work. Then he said, "Come here a second, let me show you something," and there was a note in his voice that made my throat tighten. I shook my head and said I would rather he just fixed it. "Come on, just a second," he said again, irritation under the words. I kept my hand on the car door. Lila fussed. Milo hummed louder. The man was still leaning over the engine when I heard another sound, soft at first, then clearer, the slow roll of another vehicle turning in. The man froze. His shoulders stiffened. Then he slammed the hood closed so hard the whole front of the car shook. He did not say goodbye, did not explain anything. He just jogged back to his truck, got inside, and shot out of the lot in a spray of dust and stones. I stood there, stunned, the wind carrying the faint smell of hot metal and engine fumes. "Milo," whispered Mama, "that man mad." I swallowed and told him it was okay, even though it felt anything but. The second truck parked near us, newer, silver, with Brantley's Auto Service printed neatly on the door. An older man stepped out, round belly, clean blue shirt, clear eyes. He waved and said I must be the lady with the Pathfinder. I nodded, my pulse still jumping. He introduced himself as Dax, the one I had spoken to on the phone. He looked toward the road and frowned. "Who was that who just left?" he asked. I blinked and said, "I thought that was him." He shook his head, mouth tightening. "No, ma'am." I came straight from the shop. Something cold moved down my back. He popped my hood, attached jumper cables, muttering like mechanics do when they are thinking through something. After a moment, he came to my window with something in his hand, something long and thin and rust-colored. "Ma'am," he said, "is this yours?" I stepped out, expecting a broken piece of wire. But he held up a pair of long metal shears, not normal ones, not the kind you use for crafts or trimming plants. These were long, over a foot, with narrow blades that gleamed even under the weak sun. The handles were small, delicate, but the blades were sharp as ice. They looked old, really old, but the edges had been sharpened recently. I told him I had never seen anything like it. He said he found it sitting right on top of my engine. "Right on top," he said softly, like someone placed it there. My mouth went dry. He set the shears carefully aside, told me to try the ignition. The car started instantly, the engine sounding steady and eager. Relief washed over me so hard I felt dizzy. He told me I should take the shears with me. Maybe call the sheriff when I got home. I nodded, even though my hands shook. He put them in a paper bag I had in the back. We drove out of the lot together. He turned toward Thornfield Road. I turned the opposite way, toward the long highway that already looked dim in the fading light. The ride home felt endless. Every headlight behind me made my skin prickle. At one point, I pulled over at a quiet rest stop to check on the kids, and while I leaned into the back seat to check Lila's blanket, I heard something. A soft click at the back of the car, then a push. A pressure on the trunk like someone trying to open it. I spun around fast, heart in my throat. No one was there, but the trunk latch twitched. I swear it did. I told myself the metal was shifting from the heat. I told myself that while my hands shook. Back on the road, the sky dimmed to deep purple, the kind of color that makes shadows look thicker than they should. I passed a slow bicycle on the shoulder, moving in that shaky, awkward way people do when they are tired. But when I glanced again, my breath caught. The rider was sitting wrong, his back curved strange. His head tilted way too far to the side, like his neck could not hold it straight. And his legs did not move like they should, they moved stiff, out of rhythm with the wheels. I sped up, not wanting to look long enough to understand it, but something else unnerved me even more. As I passed under a flickering streetlight, I saw something beside the Pathfinder, a shadow. Not Milo's, not Lila's, not mine. Another one. Tall, lean, close to the car like someone walking right next to us. I looked out the window. No one was there. I drove faster. When we reached home, I locked all the doors, fed the kids, then sat in the kitchen with the shears on the table, wrapped in newspaper. I called the sheriff's office. At first, the deputy sounded bored, but when I described the object, he paused, asked for measurements, asked again where it had been found. He muttered something about old surgical tools, maybe used on animals, maybe nothing. When I asked if he wanted me to bring it in, he said no. Unless something had happened, there wasn't much they could do. I hung up unsatisfied, wrapped the shears tighter, and placed them in a box in the shed. They stayed there a long time. Months passed, then the news started. Missing woman found near Thornfield Road. Unmarked truck seen near Dunwick Grove. A pattern forming, lines connecting places I had driven past. I never knew if it was the same man. I never wanted to. But sometimes, when the night feels too still and I think back to that lot, that heat, that uneasy tone in his voice, I hear the crunch of the second truck entering the lot, and I whisper a quiet thank you without meaning to. And sometimes, when I close the shed at night, I swear something shifts inside the box, metal tapping faint against wood, like someone remembering where they left their tools. I never thought mercy could almost kill me. It's strange how quick a good deed can turn into a nightmare, how a single stop on a long, empty road can change everything you are. It was Thanksgiving break, and I was trying to get home from college in Vermont to my parents' place near a small town called Fairgrove, Pennsylvania. My name is Daniel Ward, 21 years old, studying graphic design and surviving mostly on instant noodles and energy drinks. I had been up all night finishing a project, running on 3 hours of sleep and one bad cup of coffee when I started packing. My old silver Honda Accord was barely holding itself together, the kind of car that shook whenever it went over 65 and smelled faintly like burnt oil. I didn't have much, just a backpack full of laundry, a few textbooks, and an old jacket my dad gave me before I left home. To save on gas, I'd posted a rideshare note on the dorm board a week earlier. A guy named Travis Moore replied. We weren't close, more like familiar strangers from the dining hall. He was tall, quiet, and always had headphones in. Still, he said he lived about an hour from my hometown, and splitting gas seemed smart. The sky that morning looked bruised, like a storm had been waiting all night to fall apart. It would drizzle, then stop, then pour so hard the world blurred into gray lines. The air smelled like wet leaves and cold metal. My mom's voice kept echoing in my head while I loaded the trunk. Drive slow through the valleys, Danny. Don't rush the mountains. The weather there doesn't forgive mistakes. Travis slid into the passenger seat, tossed his duffel bag into the back, and buckled up. He rubbed his hands together and said, kinda half joking, think we'll make it before dark? If the rain decides to chill out, maybe, I said. If not, we'll be lucky to see home by midnight. We laughed, not knowing that by the time the sun went down, nothing would feel funny anymore. The first stretch of the drive was normal. We talked about school, the professors we couldn't stand, the food we missed from home. The wipers beat an uneven rhythm against the glass, and the tires hissed on wet asphalt. For a while, it felt almost peaceful, just the hum of the road and the faint smell of coffee between us. Then, near the border between Vermont and New York, the rain turned violent again. It hit so hard that the road vanished into a silver fog. That's when I saw him. A man stood on the shoulder, soaked to the bone, his thumb sticking out like a desperate flag. He wore a gray jacket, dark jeans, and a backpack that sagged from the rain. His head was bowed, water streaming from the hood that clung to his skull. Something in me, some stupid, stubborn kindness, made me slow down. Travis glanced at me. Don't even think about it, he said. He looks miserable, I muttered. Yeah, that's what happens when you walk highways in a storm, he said, eyes narrowing. Keep going. But guilt crawled up my spine. I thought of all those times strangers helped me when my car broke down on empty roads. Maybe this was my turn to do the same. I eased onto the shoulder. The car shook as the tires hit gravel. The man looked up. His face was pale, lips trembling. He hesitated before jogging over and opening the back door. "Appreciate it," he said, voice hoarse. "Didn't think anyone would stop." "No problem," I said, glancing at him in the mirror. "We're headed west, near Fairgrove." "You?" He shrugged. "Wherever you're going's fine." Travis crossed his arms but didn't say anything. The man, he said his name was Mason, leaned back, rubbing his hands together for warmth. He smelled faintly of wet wood and smoke, like a campfire that had gone out days ago. For a long while, none of us spoke. The rain softened, the gray world passing by in quiet waves. Mason just stared out the window, eyes unfocused. His face was calm, too calm, like he'd forgotten what emotion felt like. Travis tried to break the silence. "So, you traveling somewhere specific?" "Not really," Mason said, not looking at him. "Just moving." "Cool," Travis muttered, clearly regretting trying. Something about the man unsettled me. Maybe it was how he never blinked when the lightning flashed, or how he kept glancing at the rearview mirror, eyes meeting mine for a heartbeat before sliding away. After maybe 15 minutes, I noticed movement in the mirror. Mason had unzipped his backpack. Inside, I caught a glint of something metallic. Then he pulled it out, a hunting knife, long and black, the kind that catches every flicker of light. My throat tightened. Travis froze mid-sentence, eyes wide. Mason didn't look at us. He just turned the knife slowly in his hands, his thumb running along the flat of the blade like it was something familiar, something comforting. "Roads like this," he said softly, "they get lonely. You never know who you'll meet." I forced a shaky laugh. "Yeah, guess not." Travis cleared his throat. "You, carry that for protection or something?" Mason looked up through the mirror. His eyes were dark, unreadable, something like that. The car filled with tension so thick it was hard to breathe. Mason began tapping the knife handle against his leg, tap, 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 tap like a metronome, marking the seconds until something bad happened. My hands slipped slightly on the wheel. The rain outside blended with the thumping of my heart. "So," Mason said suddenly, voice too casual, "where exactly are you boys headed?" "Home," I said quickly. "West side of the state." He smiled faintly. "Long drive. Dangerous at night." "Yeah," I whispered. "I know." No one spoke again for what felt like hours. I kept replaying every possible escape scenario in my head. If I stopped, he could grab us. If I sped, he'd know we were scared. Every time I blinked, I saw that knife catching the light. Then, an idea. "Hey," I said, forcing my voice steady. "You guys hungry? There's a diner up ahead." "Maybe we should stop." Travis cut on immediately. "Yeah, I could use a coffee or something warm." Mason didn't answer right away. He kept tapping the handle against his leg, that same slow rhythm. Then he slid the knife back into his bag and said, "Sure." Could go for a bite. When I saw the flickering sign, Maple Hollow Diner, I nearly cried from relief. It stood beside a half-abandoned gas station, the neon lights sputtering against the rain. The place looked like something out of another decade. I pulled in, parking near the entrance under a weak yellow streetlight. My fingers trembled against the wheel. Travis exhaled. "Man, I could drink a gallon of coffee." Mason nodded once. "Sounds good." He grabbed his bag, stepped out, and shut the door. The moment I heard it latch, instinct took over. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires screamed, spraying water as the car fishtailed, then shot forward toward the highway. Travis shouted, "Go, go, go!" I didn't breathe, didn't blink, just drove. In the mirror, I saw him standing there under the flickering light, rain dripping from his hood, the knife glinting in his hand. He didn't chase us. He didn't shout, he just stood there watching us fade into the storm. We drove in silence. My pulse hammered in my ears. After miles of dark road, Travis finally whispered, "What the hell was that?" "I don't know," I said. "And I don't want to know. We didn't call the police." What could we even say? A man with a knife looked at us wrong? It sounded insane. But later that night, after dropping Travis off, I sat in my driveway, engine idling, rain misting the windshield. My parents' porch light glowed through the fog, warm and steady. and all I could think about was that man's eyes, dark and calm, watching us leave. For weeks, I dreamed of him. Sometimes I'd wake up certain I heard tapping 3 slow knocks, like the knife handle against his leg. Tap, tap, tap. 2 weeks later, on my way back to campus, I passed the hitchhiker on Route 9. The same build, the same gray jacket. My stomach turned cold. I pressed the gas harder. 5 minutes later, I saw him again, standing on the next stretch of road, thumb out, face hidden under the hood. I told myself it was my imagination. Roads repeat. People look similar. But when my steering wheel locked for a split second, as if someone invisible had grabbed it, my breath caught in my throat. The car jolted left, then released. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles went white. Then, my radio flicked on by itself. The volume rose slowly, hissing static mixed with faint whispering, voices too soft to understand but too close to ignore. I slammed the power button, but it didn't turn off. The whispers grew louder, almost forming words, something like, "Don't stop again." When I finally pulled into a crowded gas station, shaking, the radio went silent. That night, I checked the local news on my phone. A headline froze me. Body found near Route 9. Authorities investigate series of highway killings. No name was released, only a sketch. A man in a gray jacket with a dark backpack. It looked too much like Mason to be coincidence. I sat in my car for a long time, listening to the rain tick against the roof, wondering if mercy had almost led me into his story instead of my own. Sometimes, when I drive alone at night, I still glance at the shoulder, half expecting to see him again, thumb out, waiting. The stormlight always makes shapes that look too much like him, and whenever the radio hisses between stations, I swear I hear a faint rhythm beneath the static tap, tap, tap. I always thought the road at night could fix something broken inside me. I was wrong. My name is Caleb Hart, 37 years old, journalist, the kind of man who keeps running even when there's nowhere left to go. I'd been covering small-town stories for years, missing hikers, local legends, ghost towns eaten by dust, but none of them prepared me for what happened on that drive. It started on a humid August night somewhere along Highway 190, cutting through the dense, endless woods of Louisiana. I'd been assigned to photograph an abandoned water treatment facility near the Sabine River. My editor said it was for an article about industrial waste, but I knew he just wanted eerie photos for the magazine's Halloween issue. I didn't mind. I liked traveling alone, miles from anywhere, with nothing but a full tank in my thoughts. I left Baton Rouge around 8:30 p.m., the sun just bleeding out behind the trees. The highway was slick from a passing rainstorm, the sky bruised purple. My car's AC was broken, so I drove with the windows half down, letting in the warm, sticky air that smelled like wet bark and asphalt. The first 2 hours were quiet. Just the steady rhythm of tires, the low growl of cicadas, and my own breath. I played an old cassette of road blues, something to keep me awake. The miles rolled by in a blur until the world narrowed down to black trees and yellow lines. Then came the tunnel. I didn't even know there was one on that route. It cut right through a limestone ridge, its mouth gaping open like something waiting to swallow the road. I slowed as I entered, headlights washing over the smooth, dripping walls. For some reason, maybe out of boredom, I honked my horn inside, just a quick tap. No echo came back. I frowned, pressing the horn again, longer this time. Nothing. The sound just died in the air like it had been eaten. My skin prickled. It was the strangest silence I'd ever heard, thick and absolute. The kind that presses against your eardrums. I rolled my window up and drove faster, eyes locked on the pinhole of night waiting at the other end. When I came out, the forest on the other side was darker, denser. The air felt heavier, like the humidity had doubled in seconds. I told myself I was just tired, that tunnels can mess with your head, distort sound. Still, I couldn't shake the unease crawling through me. An hour later, I saw flashing lights ahead. A crash, maybe. The road curved around a bend, and there it was, an old sedan crumpled against a guardrail. Smoke curled from under the hood. I slowed, looking for anyone. The driver's side door hung open, swinging lightly in the wind. I stopped a few yards behind it, hazard lights blinking red against the trees. "Hello?" I called out, stepping halfway out of the car. My voice sounded too small against the dark. No one answered. The air was thick with that wet metal smell of burnt oil and rain. I hesitated, then decided to check. The seat was empty, the dashboard cracked. A child's shoe lay on the floorboard, soaked in something dark. My heart kicked hard. I backed away fast, reaching for my phone to call it in. But before I could dial, there was a soft knock on my window. I turned, pulse slamming in my ears. No one was there. The road was empty, the trees still. But I knew what I heard. A clear, gentle tap, like knuckles brushing glass. I scanned the woods with my flashlight, nothing but tangled roots and mist. The silence afterward was unbearable, pressing on me like the air itself wanted me gone. I drove off fast, tires spitting gravel. For miles I didn't breathe right. I tried the radio, but every station was static. My GPS froze, the signal bars blinking out one by one. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that I hadn't left whatever was at that crash behind. That maybe it had followed. By 10:15 p.m., I was running low on gas. Figures. The last sign I'd seen said next service is 28 miles. I pushed on, praying the car would hold. The woods thickened, the night deepened. I started seeing things. Movement in the trees, faint glimmers like eyes catching the light. I told myself it was animals. I didn't believe it. Finally, I spotted a light ahead. A station, thank God. A single neon sign flickering above two pumps. The words barely visible, Mason's Fuel and Service. I'd never heard of it before. The place looked ancient, built from sun-faded boards, but the lights were on. I pulled in, relief flooding me. The sign over the door buzzed weakly, open 24 hours. Inside, I could see shelves lined with dusty cans, a counter with an old coffee pot half full. I grabbed the pump nozzle, started filling my tank. That's when I smelled it. A sharp, chemical odor leaking from inside my car, thick enough to sting my throat. I turned off the pump, opened the door. The smell grew stronger, like bleach mixed with something sweet and rotten. It hadn't been there before. My stomach twisted. I searched everywhere under the seats, the trunk, nothing. Then I heard the sound. A faint drip, from inside the gas station. I walked closer, my boots crunching over gravel. Through the glass, the store looked empty, but the coffee pot on the counter was still steaming. I cupped my hands to the window. There were smears on the back wall, brown-red. Long streaks that dragged downward, like someone had clawed at the wood. My throat went dry. I stepped back slowly, pulse racing. A movement flickered near the door, something tall passing by the inside shelves. I froze. The door creaked. Just slightly. My instinct screamed to run. I spun toward the car, fumbling for the handle. Behind me, the lights inside flickered once, then steadied. I looked back just in time to see a figure standing at the counter, tall, shoulders broad, face hidden by the glare of the overhead bulb. He wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. I slammed into the driver's seat and gunned it, gravel spitting out behind me as the car lurched onto the highway. The neon glow vanished into the darkness. I didn't stop until I saw the lights of a truck stop 20 miles later. Inside, everything looked normal, bright, noisy, safe. I parked under a lamppost and sat there shaking. I called the police. Tried to explain about the gas station, the blood, the man. The operator sounded bored. "Sir, can you provide an exact location?" I couldn't. I'd lost track. She promised to send a patrol car, thanked me, and hung up. Just like that, when I stepped out, the night air hit me again, thick and damp. I could still smell that faint chemical odor clinging to my clothes. I bought a coffee inside, hands trembling. The cashier asked if I was all right. I told him I was fine, that I'd just had a long drive. He nodded, uninterested. Back at the car, I noticed the rearview mirror was tilted down. I hadn't touched it. In the reflection behind the back seat, something moved. I spun around, nothing there. Just my duffel bag and camera gear. I laughed under my breath, shaky, trying to convince myself I was losing it. But the mirror, when I looked again, it showed the faint outline of a handprint on the inside of the rear window. I wiped it off and sat there in silence. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, the world looked normal again. Sunlight over the trees, trucks humming past, everything bright and harmless. I told myself it was exhaustion, that fear can twist ordinary things into monsters. A week later, I tried to find that gas station again. Nothing. The stretch of road where it should have been was just empty land and weeds. No sign of pumps, no building, not even a foundation. Like it had been erased. I stopped at a diner nearby and asked the waitress about it. She gave me a strange look and said there hadn't been a gas station out there for over 30 years. Burned down after a murder-suicide, she said. Whole family gone. I left without finishing my meal. That night, driving home, I passed through that same tunnel again. This time, I didn't honk. But as I entered the dark, I heard something whisper my name from behind the back seat. And for a moment, I could smell that same chemical sweetness filling the car again, thick and choking. I didn't look back.